The anime begins with a girl named Serafina, who wakes up to find herself chained inside a prison cell, all alone. Before this happened, she was known as the strongest female knight in the West, leading an army in a war against the Barbarians from the East. However, to her surprise, the Barbarians were far stronger than she had expected. Realizing they couldn't win, Serafina did everything she could to create an opening for her troops to retreat, making sure as many of them returned home alive as possible. But then, the barbarian commander suddenly appeared and confronted her, challenging her to a duel, saying he had grown tired of fighting ordinary soldiers. Serafina agreed, thinking this was her best chance. She hoped to keep him busy long enough to give her troops time to retreat. However, to her shock, the barbarian commander was far stronger than she had expected and easily defeated her. But instead of killing her, he simply smiled and declared that she now belonged to him, hinting that he had his own plans for her, which left Serafina shaken with fear. Now back in the prison, Serafina panics, unsure of what to do. She fears that she might be tortured for information, or even worse, treated as an object by them, since the only reason she is still alive is because she is a woman. Her thoughts then turn to her troops. She worries about them, wondering if they manage to escape safely. More than anything, she fears for her kingdom. Without control over the eastern lands where the barbarians rule, the people in the capital may soon struggle with famine and food shortages. Just then, a girl named Circe entered the room and introduced herself as the loyal servant of the man who had captured Serafina. Seeing her, Serafina immediately grew tense, thinking Circe had come to torture her for information. But Circe only looked confused and said she had no idea what Serafina was talking about. She explained that she was there under one order, to make sure Serafina, her master's trophy, was kept in perfect condition. With that, Circe began to undress Serafina, bathe her, and dress her in clean clothes. She even applied scented oils to her skin. This left Serafina completely confused, wondering if this was some kind of barbarian ritual for prisoners. Just then, the barbarian commander entered the cell to see Serafina and introduced himself as Veor, the heir to great chief Ulden One-Eye, also known as the Thundering Voice. In response, Serafina introduced herself as Serafina de la Villon, the youngest daughter of Mattia, the former lord of the Lavalon Margraves of the Ildoran Kingdom, and the commander of the Eastern Expeditionary Force's 1st Company. She then tells him that she has no desire to beg for mercy, as she has prepared for the worse, saying how she knows how inhuman his people are, like from her grandfather, who was a part of the Eastern expedition that happened 20 years ago. Hearing this, Veer became confused and revealed that he had actually brought her here to make her his bride. He explained that he had fallen in love with her the moment they crossed swords. To him, a sword could speak louder than 1,000 words, and from her blade, he felt a deep sincerity. That alone was enough to make him fall for her. What's more, for generations, his clan had a tradition of taking female knights as their bride. This caught Serafina off guard, making her blush as she struggled to believe how ridiculous it all sounded. The story then shifts to 7 years earlier, when Serafina was appointed as the commander of the Eastern Expedition. At the time, no one was happy about it, not even her own brother, because it was very dangerous, especially since she was a woman. Hoping to change her mind, her brother gave her an invitation to a banquet hosted by Countess Ildhall, thinking she might find a husband there and give up on her dream. Having no choice, Serafina agreed to attend. However, at the banquet, no one dared to approach her. Instead, people whispered behind her back, questioning why a woman would choose to become a knight. Even her friends who came to greet her tried to persuade her to give up. They warned her that it would be dangerous, especially since she would be fighting barbarians, who were known to capture female knights and use them as sacrifice. Still, Serafina refused to back down. She said that conquering the East had been the goal of the Ildoran Kingdom since its founding, and as a member of the nobility, it was an honor to fight for the sake of the people and their peace. But her friends still didn't understand. They argued that such things should be left to men, and that a woman's greatest happiness was to marry and manage a household. Hearing this, Serafina grew angry and decided to leave. On her way back, Serafina saw a man being robbed by 3 men, so she stepped in to help. However, after learning that they had no choice and were doing it to survive because they were starving, she decided to show mercy. Instead of punishing them, she gave them her necklace and told them never to do it again. The men gratefully agreed. This moment only strengthened Serafina's resolve. She became even more determined to conquer the East as soon as possible, hoping it would improve the lives of her people. Back in the present, Serafina wakes up, only to be shocked when she finds herself in a room with Veor, who is completely naked. She then starts to panic, trying to remember what happened the night before, but nothing comes to mind. Desperate, she asks Veyor about it. He simply smiles and says he's glad to see she's so full of energy after last night. This only makes Serafina misunderstand the situation even more. In a moment of desperation, she grabs a nearby sword and prepares to take her own life, as the thought of bearing his child is her worst nightmare. But before she can act, Veyor casually knocks the sword from her hand and takes it away. He looks at her in confusion and asks why she would choose to die when she could just try to kill him instead. However, Serafina insists that he doesn't understand. As a knight, attacking an unarmed man, especially one who is naked, would be a disgrace to her honor. As they continued talking, Cersei suddenly entered the room and brought clothes for Veyor. She then explained what had happened the night before to Serafina. Apparently, after Veyor left the cell, Serafina had started vomiting badly due to a mild overdose of the sleeping drugs used to bring her there, and eventually collapsed. Seeing this, Cersei brought her to Veyor for help. Realizing that nothing had actually happened between them, Serafina felt a wave of relief, though she couldn't help but feel annoyed at how confusing Veyor had made everything. Veyor and Cersei then left the room, telling her that breakfast had already been prepared and that they would be waiting for her in the other room to eat together. Left alone, Serafina let out a sigh, unsure of what to do next. Then, out of nowhere, she recalled Veyor's words from earlier, how he had sensed a deep sincerity in her blade, and how that alone had made him fall for her. Thinking about this, Serafina couldn't help but feel a little happy, because throughout her life, she had always been told to give up on becoming a knight, and that her sword skills were meaningless. As she prepared to join them, Serafina braced herself for the worst, expecting a terrible meal since they were barbarians. However, she was shocked to see that they had prepared a large portion of meat just for her. It made her almost drool, because even as a noble, having this much meat was rare. Still, she felt suspicious, wondering why they were treating her so well. Were they trying to win her over? Veer simply sighed and told her to stop overthinking and just eat, assuring her that the food was good. Then Cersei leaned in and quietly told her that the meat had been hunted specifically for her. She explained that Veor had gone on the hunt himself, so she would have something worthy to eat when she woke up. He didn't have to do that. As the son of the great chief, he could have easily ordered his men to do it for him. Hearing this, Serafina felt unexpectedly touched. She decided to try the food and was shocked at how delicious it was. Curious, she asked what kind of meat it was. Instead of answering, Veyor told her to look outside. When she did, she was stunned to realize it was dragon meat. Even so, she didn't feel disgusted and continued eating, unable to deny how good it tasted. After finishing their meal, Veyor told her there was something in the mountains he wanted to show her. However, Serafina refused, as she didn't trust him at all. Besides, it made no sense to wander around lands filled with such dangerous creatures. But Veyor simply smirked and asked if she was afraid. Not wanting to back down, Serafina reluctantly agreed. The moment she stepped outside, she was left speechless by how beautiful the surroundings were, so different from her own kingdom. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Veyor and Cersei suddenly stopped when they reached a waterfall. Serafina couldn't believe her eyes. It was breathtaking, unlike anything she had ever seen before. Then, without warning, Veyor and Cersei began to undress, preparing to bathe, and told Serafina to join them, saying that was the whole reason they had brought her there. This shocked Serafina, and she immediately refused. However, Cersei pointed out that their people didn't have bathhouses, and if she didn't bathe there, it wouldn't be long before she started to smell. Left with no other choice, Serafina agreed. Later, the scene shifts to Cersei and Serafina bathing together, while Veyor is nowhere to be seen. As he had gone to a different stream to give Serafina some privacy and asked Cersei to stay with her to keep her safe. But Serafina doesn't see it that way. She believes Cersei is here to watch her, so she can't escape. She even scolds Cersei for earlier undressing without hesitation in front of a Veyor. But Cersei simply replies that she doesn't mind, as she has grown used to it. While they continue talking, Serafina suddenly notices monsters casually wandering nearby. Panicked, she immediately runs away, even though Cersei calls out for her to stop. After running for a while, Serafina suddenly realized she had left her clothes back at the waterfall. But just as she was about to return, she heard a noise nearby, which made her freeze in fear. She worried that she might run into another barbarian, someone far more savage than Veyor. But instead, a handsome young barbarian stepped out. Seeing her like this, he smiled and guessed that some beasts must have appeared while she was bathing. He then mentioned that it reminded him of his mother, who had been a warrior from the west. She used to tell him stories when he was young about how there was less nature and fewer animals there. Hearing this, Serafina realized that his mother must have been a lady knight from an expedition around 20 years ago, judging by his age. Then, all of a sudden, she began to shiver from the cold. The young man noticed and gently gave her his coat to cover herself, making her blush. She couldn't help but think what a gentleman he was, completely different from Veor, whose first words to her had always been about marriage. But then she started shivering. Again, worried, the young man quickly checked her temperature and carried her, saying he would get her out of the forest as quickly as possible. This made her blush even more. Just then, Circe suddenly appeared and apologized for interrupting them. She then addressed the young man as Master Veor and asked what had happened. Hearing this, Serafina froze in shock, her mind going completely blank. Veor couldn't help but smirk as he teased her, saying all it took was a shave for her to blush like a maiden, which made her embarrassed, and she slapped him across the face. On the way back, Serafina kept complaining to Veor, blaming him for taking her into a place full of monsters. That's when Circe explained that she didn't need to worry, because Veor regularly patrolled the area where dangerous creatures might appear, so the monsters near the waterfall were actually harmless. This made Serafina wonder if the dragon they had eaten earlier was dangerous. Veor replied that it wasn't, saying that although dragons had a wild temper, they were generally quite cowardly. But Circe quickly interrupted him, saying that only he could see them that way. Even if they were herbivores, a dragon of that size was still dangerous to most people. Even so, Veor didn't seem to mind. He said it was a small price to pay since he had gotten to see another side of the woman he loved today. Hearing this made Serafina blush again, and she quickly walked ahead, trying to hide it while thinking about how handsome Veor actually looked without his beard, only to be disappointed the next day when she saw him again with his beard back. If you've come this far, please consider liking and subscribing for more videos like this. Thank